Andisa Ramavhunga is here with me. He's Group Chief Advisor at Ntiyiso Consulting Group. Andisa, thank you so much, my brother, for joining me. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Aubrey. It's always great to be here.
I want you to comment a little bit on our efforts here, because I think sometimes if we don't contextualize periodically why and what we're trying to do, we may fall into a tick box exercise. And we lose soul, we lose true relevance in why it is that we're doing what we're doing. Why are we having these conversations?
So, Aubrey, we had a conversation, I guess, last week, and this is where we ended, by the way.
Yeah.
To contextualize why we're having these conversations. I guess the simple answer for me is that you need to realize that the country, South Africa in particular, right? Because we can extend, I guess, our concepts to the African continent and the world at large. But I think let's keep it home for now.
Yeah.
We looked at the stats with my business partner at some point in time, and you'll be surprised, or maybe not surprised, to notice that the economy has not been growing. In fact, the line is flat. The real growth, by the way, if you were to strip out inflation, it's literally sitting at zero. And the line is quite scary for some of us who probably understand these things and look at it, because it almost resembles the flat line, which is that of a dying patient.
Yeah.
And you'll ask yourself, what happened to that growth? My hypothesis is actually quite simple, is that the big corporates will continue to grow. In fact, they call that growth joblessness growth, right? Because it only creates probably value for the few who are invested and who've got the capital to deploy. And this is not the area where we'll find a lot of jobs. And the next hypothesis is to say, where are these jobs going to come from? I think they are going to come from small, medium enterprises, your papas and mamas shop. That's employing anything between 1 and say 20 people. But you need to have as many of these as possible so that you get the impact that's required. And I sit here without preaching, by the way. We have a bubble with our joblessness in the youth in particular. I think the last time I checked it was 65%, which is almost unfathomable, right?
Yeah.
That says you have 65% of your most potent section of society that are sitting at home idle, with nothing else to do. And I cannot start lamenting the implications of those if we were to look at an able mind and a capable body. What sort of the crime related incidents is that crime out of this? I think it's just a bed for ill manifestation. So I do believe, and we do believe as a business, that the biggest growth will come from the small to medium enterprises. I guess what we are trying to achieve with this particular conversation is to how do we create those business? How do we create them so that they are resilient? How do we create them so that they scale and are sustainable in a long future and are able to absorb as many of the people as possible, particularly the youth? I guess that's the nut and shell of it, but I thought it was quite important to give that context to say what we are doing here. It's our own contribution to what we see as the ill in the country, and unfortunately, we're not miracle makers, right? I think God has just endowed us with one particular skill set, and it's only our then small contribution to say how do we come in the area of entrepreneurship and make sure that we impart the necessary skills that are required to start, run, grow, and scale a business. And we hope some of those businesses will become corporates eventually. But it's the small businesses. It's the small businesses that are going to create the growth. It's the small businesses that are going to absorb a lot of the joblessness that's out there, a lot of the masses that have no hope. So that's what we are trying to achieve in a very small way. And if we can spread the gospel as far as possible, I do hope sincerely that we are going to impact significantly to the mandate of growing the country.
Yeah. I sense that whether we understand it or not, that as an economy, we are facing some very real existential crises if we don't stimulate a more resilient and well-developed entrepreneurial sector.
Yeah.
You and I have conversations about development very often, and I suppose what I'm trying to ask is, to what extent do we create a real economy that isn't just about the injections of cash by government into certain projects that invariably create a dependency on government without creating the value that is independent on government? I imagine that part of what we need to do as a developmental state is create non-government dependent entities that stimulate growth.
It also speaks to global competitiveness as well, because I think the concepts that we've been discussing, and it's coming back to the point that says we're not building businesses that are going to be dependent on a government economy, but the ones that can scale and move to service other countries in the world. If we were to get our mandate correct, obviously we start somewhere, but eventually the type of businesses with the type of concepts and knowledge, I guess we are imparting, those are competitive businesses that you can plant anywhere in the world. And you'd be surprised, Aubrey. We've not spoken. Of course, government is a valid client, but you and I, we've never had conversations around government, and we will offer as part of the. But we talk about clients in generic, and we talk about value creation vis-a-vis money. Not that money is not important, and we go on to say, how do you define that value proposition? And I guess this concept today of marketing is where we are in terms of defining that value proposition, because again, I think it's one of those simplified concepts that if you really think deep and philosophical about business, there's much more complexity to value. Even we've touched when we spoke about money, even to a certain extent, some spirituality around value that we're creating. And what we are trying to stimulate is the debate that gets you to think about those things as an entrepreneur, to say, think broader than just a product, right? There's a whole lot of myriad of concepts that you need to think about. And marketing is for me one of those quite interesting and things that I probably came very late to. I wouldn't even say claim to understand in total, but I think I've fundamentally shifted my mind to what marketing it is, beyond just the desktop, almost benign understanding that entrepreneurs typically have, and those are the things that will demystify. And if I do my job correctly, at least we'll learn together and we'll push the boundaries of what we think marketing is, and how it fundamentally changes the landscape and the fortunes of the business.
So we've sort of laid the foundation as to the inspiration behind tonight's conversation, and that is, what is marketing? Why marketing? And what do you need to understand about these concepts of marketing in order for your marketing efforts to be effective? Join us now in calling on all marketers, 011-883-0702, as we delve into this very important concept in business. So what is marketing?
Yeah, so, and again, I don't want to alienate marketers, because we all have different schools of thought. I guess I come from the school of thought that says, how do we take concepts from being scientific concepts to being applied concepts, and more importantly, from being applied concepts, but to become almost practical guide to a day by day, or what do they call it, an idiot's guide,
right?
To implementation.
You should call it Aubrey's guide.
So you said we don't want to become a tick box exercise, and I agree with you. But I think for me, if we were able to reduce things to not becoming tick box, but checklists. I know I'm probably straddling a language here. To say a checklist of what an entrepreneur, I mean, for me, a checklist serves a point that says, have I thought about these things before I go to business? And by the way, if you have not thought about those things, not that you won't succeed, but you have just severely reduced your chances of success.
Right. Right.
And creating a robust business. So, and you'll understand, I mean, when I came to marketing, and I've studied, I think, probably 2 courses in marketing, one in the MBA, and the other in fact, two MBAs, and the other in a master's degree course. And I've always been boggled down by jargon and I guess concepts that really do not resonate with me in a coherent way.
Right.
If you remember, marketing you'd be told there's four P's of marketing. I think now they've expanded them to 7 P's, and you probably
all sorts of P's.
It becomes so cumbersome. But I think what I've at least come to appreciate, definitely in the last 3 years of my career, and I'll steal a quote from Drucker that says, marketing is a concept broader than just selling, because other people think and by the way, it's not the same. Marketing and sales are not the same.
Sure.
He goes on to say it encapsulates the entire business, right? And I'm quoting verbatim for those of you who are well read. But the more important of that quote, he says, marketing, when done right, makes sales superfluous. And I don't know whether people understand the word superfluous. I'm playing big words. Drucker was a guru of management consulting in the US. But superfluous basically means if you do marketing correct, you actually do not need to sell.
Right.
And you then need to start to understand the power
you simply become an order taker.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you do your marketing right. You don't need to sell. But we obviously live in a real world. We cannot completely disassociate marketing. But I'll bring it back to a definition now to say what is a marketing. And again, I'll go back to academia. I think the Institute of Marketers in the US, I found they've got the best definition, at least of what I've come across. They say these are a set of processes that an organization has in order to create, deliver, and capture value. And you'll quickly realize those terms are the terms that we use to define strategy.
Right.
If you remember, in our first conversation. So I also have my take on this. When you're given words that says processes, business process, again becomes very complicated language. But I simply say that it's the work that an entrepreneur needs to do to create the value, deliver it, and capture it as well. And we'll come to the concept of value capture. And they go on to say marketing has got 4 main processes that you need to think about. And this is where, for me, the world was opening up. If you are thinking, and I know a lot of people think marketing is about advertising and taking billboards. And in fact, that's a very least mundane part of marketing. In fact, other people don't even need to do that. And this is when Drucker says marketing makes sales superfluous, because it's these other processes, by the way, and I've sort of alluded now to say advertising and branding is part of marketing, but I'd like to suspend that because, again, I'm not saying it's not part of marketing, but I think that has been elevated in terms of importance. And to me, those are the least important things in marketing. But there are 3 other processes that are I think more dominant. One is the process of determining what value you create. The second one is the process of how do you capture that value. The third one is the process of delivering the value. The fourth one, obviously, is how do you communicate that value, which is a function of branding and marketing.
Which is what we are mostly exposed to.
Yeah.
The communication of that value.
Yeah.
That the branding and that's what most of us are exposed to as marketing, right?
In marketing, yeah.
But you're saying to me that there's other stuff behind it.
Processes. Much more important, right? By the way. Those ones, if you get them right, by the way, you'll see that your branding and advertising and stuff become superfluous. Not that you don't need to undertake in them, but they become so targeted and so pinpointed that when you deliver that message to the market, it makes that sales superfluous, as we've meant. The first very important one is determining the value. This is where marketing would help. We spoke, you and I, when we started our conversation to say what is strategy and how does strategy create value. And I sort of alluded that there's three things to a strategy. One of them is obviously you've created a product, you've created a company, and you think you're ready for market. The first bit I said in entrepreneur needs to think about is that product desirable, right? Which is a function of where marketing plays the biggest role, because I said there's 4 elements to that desirability element. The first element is that do you have a value proposition, which is a stack of the product, combined with the product features, combined with the pain points that it's serving, but much more importantly, and you'll see when we discuss other issues around marketing, is this element of the
desirability. Yeah.
The one that says what emotions that product evokes. And we used an Apple example, if you remember, to say Apple still sells computers like everyone else, but there's some element that they are playing around which is much, much more important and which elevates their product. That's why you'll pay gazillions. I mean, if you look at their probably gadgets, they are much, much more expensive than the other ones. And that's the emotional side that they are able to connect, that raises the thing. But in fairness, if you were to look at the product itself, feature for feature, I think there are much, much better products there. And obviously, if you look at some of the product features as well, like the after sales and so forth, maybe they match, but other people are much better. I would even argue that Dell had again, it's a different strategy. They had a much better, I think, product stack in terms of VP combined with product features, but they lack in the emotions side. And by the way, you'll see that you start having less competition if you play on the emotion side. But anyway, I digress a bit.
Are you suggesting that the process of marketing is essentially about wanting to connect your value proposition to the market's emotions?
Yeah. So marketing is where you take your product to market. I guess that's the simplest.
Sure.
And by the way, it's not only connecting, because now you're also gravitating towards the communicating of the value, but there are a set of strategic decisions that an entrepreneur needs to make on the value proposition itself. One, I still think even if you have a product, you have to test it out, and this is where marketing assists you, by the way. And you'll see other people doing it very well. Things like focus groups, for example.
Yes.
When you have one-on-one interviews with your clients, those are all marketing exercises, and they form part and parcel of that first block of an important process of the 4 processes that is about determining what value. Yeah. But there are other ones, by the way, that says, have you segmented your market? Right? And once you've segmented, have you targeted? Segmentation of market, meaning taking a very large group of people, breaking them up using various indicators, because you are trying to create homogeneity around those markets. Things like, do you segment by geography, or do you segment by age, or do you use some form of...
it's the creation of very specific demographics.
Yeah. More than demographic, because sometimes it could be things like needs. You're solving the same problem for the same people, irrespective of demographic. But I mean, there's a science to segmentation, right. But I think it's quite important that we elevate it for entrepreneurs, because they can have very simple ways of segmenting their market, which they can then test, because the whole aim, and I think we've raised it before, that we need to have at least a hypothesis going out and test it and come back and be able to refine it.
I want you to, because it's a question that's playing around in my head, and it started out with you talking about the issue of desirability for a particular product or a service. You've gone on to speak about the connecting to our emotions and beyond its utilitarian value.
Yeah.
There's other things that we want to connect to. But is it possible for marketers to create desire? In other words, to bring to the mind of the market that actually you desire this thing, whether you knew it or not?
By the way, that's Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Simplest definition. I mean, again,
because if we're speaking about just desirability of a product or a service, it's a very passive relationship with the market. You assume that the market desires this thing.
Yeah.
But is it possible that something was not even in the purview of the consciousness of the market, and you literally create a desire?
No, absolutely. Either school of thoughts work.
Right. Okay.
Right. I guess it's a spectrum of how good are you as an innovator or not. And I used, sorry to interject you, to say Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was that kind of a marketer, by the way, because if you think about Steve Jobs, by the way, before the iPod, for those, I'm sure everyone knows an iPod, but an iPod is a device that's able to carry thousands and thousands of audio device, now video as well, and you carry it in your pocket. So it was replacing a stereo, by the way. Not only did it do that, but it has a touch interface, a touch screen, and they've later on went on to reinvent the business model where now you did not need to buy the content, but you can license it, thereby giving you the plethora of things that are in there. Before Steve Jobs, those things were unheard of, right? If you think about the first iPod that came in, it was unheard of. So he was anticipating the need of combining technologies that existed at that time to give rise to a new product. And it has given a whole lot of, in fact, I would even argue the platform industry started out of that. Yeah, so that's one class of entrepreneurs, and it's not all of us, obviously, and not to say that those are the biggest classes of entrepreneurs. And you look at entrepreneurs like Jeff Bezos, for example, where he was delivering books. I think that's how we started with Amazon, which is a very utilitarian product, but he adds certain features and conveniences and to build and make the product what it is and desirable to the market, and hence why Amazon grew from what it is.
Behemoth that it is.
Yeah, in fact, it's bigger than, he's created much more wealth than Steve Jobs, who's this other. So both of them have got a space, but you'll quickly realize that with both of them, it was not just a product that they landed. And that's where the function of marketing comes in. There was a lot of determining what value they are delivering and be able to compact that value and segment the market and target it and be able to really go after it. Because if you think about Bezos, it's about people who buy books, but it's not everyone who wants to buy books that using that channel. So he needed to find those people who have that propensity to do engage in that value and be able, more importantly, to pay for it.
Right.
And marketing allows you to do that, because I've mentioned now that and I can hypothesize that they actually got feedback from clients, right? They spoke to them. They conducted one-on-one interviews. They probably did group studies of some sort, or conducted some market research to come and influence how their product evolution or the journey of their product evolution. And this is, I'm saying, those are the critical activities of marketing. And if entrepreneurs are not thinking about that, it becomes more survivalist business than a scaling business. It
sounds to me, and I do want to get a sense of what the scaling means, but it sounds to me that marketing is about really understanding what the business proposition of your business is.
Yeah.
And then putting together the resources that are going to understand the market in which this value proposition is going to function.
Yeah.
And I suppose as a last part of the process is to then communicate.
In fact, there's a step in between, which is targeting.
It's targeting, right? Yeah. So obviously when you've segmentalized your market as effectively as possible.
Yeah.
And you've targeted it.
Yeah.
You then communicate to it.
In fact, let me even complicate it further. Then there's the positioning element once you've targeted. So positioning element is the one that says, how do you position that product and services in the mind of a consumer? This is now where you're starting playing the emotional part.
Right.
And then you can communicate.
Right. Now, is it possible, because most of the entrepreneurs that you and I are talking to right now probably don't have a George Bezos budget.
Yeah.
Probably don't have a budget that Steve Jobs would have. Is it possible to intuitively understand all of those things that the marketing mind needs to understand at the level of the entrepreneur who employs 10, 20 people?
That's what we're trying to get them to do, right? Because I guess one of the things I've said is obviously there are people who can help you with this, and for those who've got the budgets or they are able to access budgets, marketing budgets from third parties, and I'll name some third parties who do these things. You are then able to at least understand what you must get out of your marketing efforts. But more importantly, nothing stops an entrepreneur from one understanding the value. And that's a function of interacting with your customers to really get who you ask yourself, okay, why are these people buying, right? Who is actually buying from me? What sort of a mind connectedness do they have to my product? You can, by the way, start doing the first step, right? That says, okay, there are people who are coming to my shop to buy Amakunya Army. Most of them are young. They buy because they are near me, but because of also the cool factor that I'm young and understand those things, and I simplify. So again, you'll see now that you've done three things of those marketing. You've done understanding the value proposition. You've understood your market. You've probably targeted and started building some element of positioning, right? The next thing now that you need to do is to say, okay, knowing what I know, how do I use my communication? Clearly, it can't be big budgets, right? You say, okay, maybe social media is the way to go because I'm talking to mostly young people who reside in this area. Or maybe the local community activities that are happening, whether it's church or it's social. Those are my platforms to communicate, but communicate what already I've found out from my market around why they buy from me, why they should come to me, and what value do people perceive.
I want to take a quick break on 011-883-0702. My guest is Andisa Ramavhunga. He's the Group Chief Advisor at Ntiyiso Consulting Group. We're talking marketing. It's not sales. It's something else. What do you understand marketing to be? And perhaps you could take some of these ideas and superimpose them onto your business, whatever your business is. Has this conversation started to make you think a little bit harder about what are the processes that you need to be thinking about in order for you to be more relevant to your market? Yeah? Give us a call. I'd love to hear from you.
Entrepreneurship
on 702.
Andisa Ramavhunga is Group Chief Advisor at Ntiyiso Consulting Group. We're talking about marketing. And it's a broader conversation, but marketing for your business, for the size of business that you have, with not only the idea that we want to increase the sales of your goods and services, but also to grow your business, to scale your business. What is the thinking that you need to have before selling? Yeah, in order for you to connect at an emotional level with your market about the goods and services that you are providing. Give me a call. I'd love to hear from you. Keketso is in Witpoortjie. Good evening to you, Keketso. Where is Witpoortjie?
Witpoortjie, good afternoon, good evening, sorry.
Yeah.
Witpoortjie is in the West Rand of Johannesburg. It's in Roodepoort.
Okay. Go for it.
Yeah.
So tell me your
good
thoughts.
Evening
Good
to
evening
all the listeners.
Yeah.
So my point of view is I am a third year student at AFDA doing my business innovation in entrepreneurship. And we basically just focus on new age of entrepreneurship and innovation, and we work on projects and building new projects. And I've been listening to you guys' topic about marketing, and it just raised some, a few things that we've learned that only in first year. And I think our entrepreneurs need to understand that, yes, you need to have a target market. Yes, you have a niche market, but the most important thing is moving with the technology. Innovation, design thinking is what actually makes up marketing. For example, what I mean by that is digital marketing. Yes, the conversation has been going, but I haven't heard anything about digital marketing. Digital marketing is a growing industry, and we need people to bring their businesses into NFT marketplaces. Your Spatial is a metaverse platform where people are actually using the spaces to advertise their businesses. We can't only be using your Instagram and LinkedIn. You need to immerse yourself in new technologies and innovation, because that's where the world is going. We have Web 3.3 now, Web 3.3, and we have a new ways of doing things. So that's where entrepreneurs need to be. You can't be stuck in your Web 1.2. You need to move with what the technologies are bringing in. You have your Microsoft. Microsoft is shifting from being a normal Google and Google as well. They're now including AI. So you also need to think of ways that you can incorporate AI into your businesses as well, and move with the technologies and implement all these things into your businesses. Because if you're only going to use your things like your Instagram and only post one picture a day, people don't even follow you people on Instagram anymore. You need to think, how can I use new age technology? How can I use an AI robot that can probably generate, instead of having a chat box on your website, think of how can I incorporate ChatGPT that can do that work faster for me. So that's what I have to say. There's new ways. Let's think faster. Thank you.
So in Witburgi, there's new ways. Let's think faster. I could hear that snap in the fingers. Valid points by Keketso?
No, absolutely, Keketso. But you'll see again that you are gravitating towards the communication element. And I'm saying whatever medium you use, there are other critical steps that you need to engage, whether you come do new age or even if you were to go traditional media, by the way. I think gone are the days where you just do a flyer and hope that people get the message. Yeah. I think you need to be at least aware of the message that you are taking to the market, and that has to do with understanding your value proposition. It has to do with segmentation and targeting of your market, and what positioning you need to do. Then you can go and communicate. Her points are valid.
Yeah, it feels like you're saying to me that, look, whatever mode of transport you use, and you can decide to use the latest Lamborghini to get to wherever you want to get, or you can go, the old route with a bus, but at least know where you're going.
Absolutely.
Is what you're saying to me.
Absolutely. No,
and Keketso was saying, listen, there's new technology for getting to where we want to get to, and we can get there faster, more efficiently, and that's fine. But what you're saying to me is that know where you're going first and understand the terrain where you're going, so that you then use the right technology, the right ways of speaking to that market, is what I'm hearing you say. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I said there are 4 processes of marketing, and unfortunately, I'm looking at time again, and we are always victims of this, Aubrey. And I think I've only spoken about just the first element of determining value, right? Yeah. I said there's also the element of capturing the value, and there's the element of delivering the value, and the final element of communicating the value. And I guess if we get time, we can probably not speak to Koketso's level of awareness in terms of this technology.
Sure.
But it's safe to say that there are platforms to communicate. And I agree with what I think those technologies have done. They've just made the cost of doing whatever we do as entrepreneurs very affordable. They've just liberalized at least the communication aspect of marketing. If you think about chatbots, there are no people manned, but again, there's some investments that you need, and there are some, again, other people who are innovative, where you can come in and rent a chatbot and deploy it in whatever infrastructure. I think social media has done wonders, right? If you look at the marketplace and all those things. And those are all well and good, by the way, and would encourage entrepreneurs to take advantage of them, because they do reduce the cost of marketing. Gone are the days of big adverts, big billboards. But for those, again, depending on where you want to compete, those are still available avenues. But whatever you do, it's important that you understand what value you're delivering to the market. You must understand who your target market is and what position you want to give them in your mind. And then you can go and craft very good messages in the various platforms.
Still water runs deep on the WhatsApp lines. I can listen to Andisa all day long. I have a question for him. How does one apply those marketing fundamentals on a product that was not created by the entrepreneur himself? For instance, in selling a vehicle which you can't create, For instance, in selling a vehicle which you can't create the need, but have to wait for somebody who already made up their mind, but may not be sure what they want, says Stillwater. I'm sure you can think about that. I want to take another call from Thabo as you think about that, and maybe you'll incorporate the ideas. Yeah. Thabo is in Pretoria. Good evening to you, Thabo.
Yeah, bro, my stupid analysis of marketing is when I sit alone in my own world. Yeah. I always say marketing is like identifying a product, and then after identifying that product, then you look at the product, you look at the advantage of that product, and you take it to the market, and you show it to people that this is something that is good for this and this and this and that. At the end of the day, this thing can change your life, this and this and this. And the market will determine, in the market, you stimulate the needs. I don't know if I'm clear. You stimulate the needs for people to see the need to have that product in their life. And secondly, the previous caller actually said something very important. Yeah. Apps like TikTok and everything, I've seen in China are now selling things online. And then there are people that are buying things online and everything. And I think we should also, like your guest is saying, we should also promote this thing, that our companies should tap into that and see to it that they sell things online.
Sure. No, absolutely. Thank you. Thabo in Pretoria, much appreciated. Yeah. There's two ideas coming together.
Thabo has just, I think, laid down the function or the purpose of marketing in a very layman's, and I agree with him. Although I would like to add that there's a science behind each and every one of those elements is mentioned. Again, I'm saying there's the product itself. Understand what the product does. Understand its features, and understand the pain point. I think the first caller could not really understand what he was getting to, but I think it's quite important that to realize that it all starts with the customer, right? We have to be solving a need. You have to be either solving a need or fulfilling a process or a task on behalf of someone. Yeah. It has to start there. Once you've appreciated those things, you then need to build on, and I think we addressed this in our first conversation, Aubrey, around there's the product plus the stack, the product features, the pain points and the emotions that it evokes. That's why we don't refer to products as products, but as value propositions, right? Because a product by itself, it's exactly that, a product. But when you add all those things, the features and emotions, it become a value proposition. And I don't like using the concept of cars, but I think it's sort of like lens, right? To say a car is just a car, right? You can obviously it's a mode of transport from moving from point A to point B. But if you were to think about who the providers are there and the markets that they target, those are separate markets, right? I would argue that Toyota is more the durable guy. They're selling more durability. It's still a car, but it appeals to people who want a car that will last longer. They can take it to terrain without worrying. And then you start moving into the luxury space. And again, if you look at BMW versus Mercedes, BMW I think is more speed and fanatics of some sort, right? Vis-a-vis a Mercedes-Benz is a laid back, probably even a higher age group type a car. Then you start moving into these other ones like Rolls-Royce, but they're all cars at the end of the day. But all of them, by the way, you know, the interesting thing is that if you were to match BMW and Mercedes-Benz, you will find that like for like, they actually do the same thing.
Yeah.
But how they are positioned in the mind of a consumer is different, right? So that's what I'm talking about when I say you have to think. We can all be selling amagwinya.
Yep.
But how we position igwinya lethu in the mind of a consumer is very critical, and we have to think about those things. And this is where marketing, and I'd like again to delve deep into some of the scientific things that you might consider when you do that.
I think it's critical what you've just said, that the whole marketing process is essentially customer centric.
Yeah.
It's about the customer.
It starts with the customer.
It's not about me, the person that is trying to market. It is about answering the questions of the customer.
Yeah.
So I remember in a conversation we had in the past where we talked about a drill bit.
Yeah.
That I, as the manufacturer of the drill bit, could be on about the alloys, the strength of the drill bit and the durability of it all and how long it takes to drill a hole and so forth. When in fact, the customer isn't really interested in all of that stuff. They're interested in whether or not the hole will be
3-inch hole,
will be put in there. So my conversation to the market has to be about the hole, not the drill bit.
Not the drill bit, yeah. No, absolutely.
And that is the centricity that we're talking about here, the customer centricity, that we as the manufacturers or the founders or the creators of the concept can be so bogged down in how we understand the product or service that we are, or the value proposition. But actually, the value proposition must speak to the questions and the needs of the customer. And that is a fundamental mindset of the marketer, right?
And I guess what we are pushing here is that we always start with the thing that says we are building products. I think it's natural that we people start there. And I said that more often than not, businesses start as a form of necessity, right? I'm able to bake, therefore I'm going to make a makuinya to make a living. But once your business gets to a certain stage, you have to think carefully about to say, okay, is it actually really about amakuinya? Or is it really about quick food based on where I am, the packaging that I do, the design, the layout? Is it maybe about that and less about the product? And I'm saying the function of marketing will come and address those questions. If you understand there's a product that can do some utility things that we've identified, but the form of marketing comes in. It's around understanding that value proposition, right? That says, what is it that the market wants, and am I answering or not? Or do I need to build certain features in my product in order to answer the market that I'm creating that need for?
We haven't gone to scalability and scaling.
No, we've not even come to
but that's great.
Value, by the way, capturing. Because that's a very fundamental.
And we haven't even talked about how we communicate all of that stuff. But that's good, because I think we're looking at 3 parts to the marketing conversation. Yeah. Certified Kulichana says, I'm learning a lot. And from now onwards, no more printing flyers, lots of billboards, etc., without knowing what I'm marketing. Nice. I like that provision. I like that, because we can't say no more billboards and no more. We've got to understand what question that particular action answers, right?
Absolutely.
He says we have lost a lot of money branding our cars, printing T-shirts, etc., thinking only about communication without taking care of the first steps, says Certified Kulichina. Yeah, we haven't spoken about the communication aspect, which is the aspect that most of us are exposed to whenever we think marketing.
We always rush to it.
That's right.
And that's why Kuli is absolutely right that we throwing bad money.
Yeah.
Or good money after bad.
Precisely. So we've got really literally 3 minutes. I want us to contextualize once more by saying, we are not saying that forget about the billboards, forget about the communication, but we are saying think about why you're going to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
Think clearly about why you're going to do that as you refine your understanding of your value proposition in a way that is going to be understood by the market.
Yeah.
Not just you, but the market. The centricity here seems to be that it must be about the customer and how and what questions they are asking. Help me through.
Yeah. Maybe I'll use a very gruesome analogy, right? Yeah. The analogy of a sniper.
Yeah.
In a tree sitting. If you know, if you've watched movies of snipers, those are not machine gun people. They just don't spray, right? They're not very wasteful.
Yeah.
The first 3 steps are really about targeting and looking at your target and increasing your chances of a hit rate or a kill rate. Communication is just pulling the trigger.
Communication is just pulling the trigger.
It's just pulling the trigger.
Andisa Ramavhunga, it's been great talking to you about marketing. Do you realize that there's part 2 and part 3 here?
Yeah, I do.
As of course we get to the point where we even discuss issues.
By the way, we also added sales here, but I guess we can suspend that one because if you do this one right, you'll see even the sales part becomes quite easy.
It's just pulling the trigger, I suppose.
Yeah.
Listen, folks, it's been a great conversation with Andisa Ramavhunga. It appears to me that as we have these conversations, the idea of development in our parlance, in our conversations, is going to start emerging even more. Because yes, we are, I suppose, talking to an emerging, developing economy, right? What is your final word to those entrepreneurs who are in that space? I know that we were not going to see you for a couple of weeks until next year, but what is your message in this developmental context for entrepreneurs?
So what we are doing here for entrepreneurs is just to whet their appetite. There's, I guess, a lot of material that's available for them. In Google particularly, you can research about market segmentation and you'll find quite a lot of stuff to read in there. Targeting as well, positioning as well. So I guess what we are trying to at least impart on entrepreneurs is that there's a science to everything. And there's a structured way of thinking about these concepts. And what we are giving you here is just a toolbox, which is a checklist, by the way, I go back, of things that you need to think about. And I really do invite entrepreneurs to go from our first conversation to the one to date and see if they are ticking all those tick boxes.
Andisa Ramavhunga, Group Chief Advisor at Ntiyiso Consulting Group. Thank you so much for